Hi everyone, my name is Mariah. I am an 11th grade student from the International School of Bangalore, and I am here with Kalika Bali. She is an accomplished linguist and technologist working as a researcher at Microsoft Research India. Currently, she's working on Project Melange, where she's trying to process and generate code mix language data for both text and speech. Kalika, thank you so much for joining me here today. We are looking forward to hearing about your work and journey that could hopefully convince young girls to chase after their dreams. We be-
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
okay, so I'm just curious to know, how did you get interested in this field? What motivated you to pursue technology and linguistics?
Okay, so this is a very long story, so I don't know how long do you want this to be, but I was typical rebellious teenager who thought she knew best, and I don't think I would like my kids to be like me, but so I studied chemistry honors as an undergrad. I was a science student at school. I went on to do chemistry. I fought with my parents that I want to do chemistry because it's such a fantastic subject. I had all these visions of mixing potions, etc. And then, towards the end of my studies, I had kind of decided that chemistry is not for me. And I had started, working a little bit in um, journalism. My dad was a journalist, and I actually thought that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pursue journalism as my career. But then I went to Jawaharlal Nehru University to pick up forms for my sister, for my younger sister. And I looked around and I thought, this is a very nice place. I wouldn't mind studying here. It's such a nice environment. And this is the physical environment. I had no idea how the academic environment was. And I looked at the brochure and I thought, oh, this linguistics sounds interesting. It's got something to do with language. I'd never heard of linguistics before. And I thought ancient history is something that I love reading about. So ancient history sounds interesting as well. And JNU has an entrance exam, so I filled in the forms to sit for the entrance exam for both linguistics and ancient history. And linguistics, I was a member of the British Council Library, so I found this like thin, less than 100-page book on introduction to linguistics, so that I at least knew what I was, getting into. I read just that, and I went for the entrance exam. Now, the entrance exam is held in May in Delhi. In peak summer, it's frightfully hot. Okay, and the exam was held in one of the Kendriya Vidyalaya campuses, and there were no fans, there was no electricity at that time. So the linguistic exam was in the morning, so I took the exam, and the ancient history one was in the afternoon, and I decided I'm going to pass away I'm going to pass out in this heat. I just went away. I didn't take the exam. So I got through linguistics, and no one was more surprised than I was. And the rest, as they say, is history. I fell in love with the subject immediately. I think when you actually find what you really want to do, you know it in an instant, right? So within like the first month, in the beginning, it was a little difficult for me because I came from a science background. Most of my classmates came from a literature background or a language background. And I thought, I was at a disadvantage because they already knew so much about, how to do this stuff, but they didn't. Linguistics is one subject that actually goes from pure science, pure philosophy, and everything in between. So I just fell in love with it, and then I got a scholarship to go study in England. And post that, I actually got a job working as a university lecturer in Fiji, in the University of the South Pacific. And well, I did like teaching. I still love interacting with students and love teaching. I hate marking exams. I hate marking stuff. So, but Fiji was different. It was a very unique experience. The university catered to some 12 island nations. I never had such different mix of races in a single classroom that I had to teach. A lot of my students, a significant percentage of my students were much older than me. I just finished, my university, and there were people who were returning to get degrees who were already teachers. They were in their 50s at that time. um, and the first class I taught was an introductory level linguistics class, and I had 5 women there ready to give birth. And I was so scared. Every time I would go there to teach, I would like pray, say, please don't let them give birth during my class. And from there, I kind of went off to work in Belgium in a company. They actually hired me um, through. They were at a conference that I was giving a paper in, and they kind of contacted me. They wanted to build these speech systems. Um, like you have, they're very common now. All your um, speech recognition and speech synthesis systems, and they wanted me to work on Hindi and Urdu. Uh, so they hired me, and I went off to work in Belgium in a technology company. And from there, I kind of moved to another technology company, came back to India to work in technology. So I think that transition happened from being like a pure academic linguist to a technologist. And it happened so long ago that now if anyone asks me what I am, I always say I'm some kind of a hybrid animal, not really a pure linguist and not really a computer scientist. So, but yeah, a technologist nevertheless.
But I mean that it just seems so interesting how like you managed to, like you had your mind set on chemistry and then you moved on to linguistics. But what was it about linguistics that made you change your mind to study that area?
So, I think linguistics is a very, very fascinating subject. And like I said, it kind of goes from pure physics to absolute philosophy in the entire gamut of what linguists study. Um, I think what really attracted me to studying linguistics was that I'd already always been attracted towards languages, right? Like how languages work. I loved reading, I was like writing, etc., etc. And according to my mom, I started speaking at 6 months and haven't stopped since then. So you know, um, language was always like something that was a focus in my family as well. And linguistics kind of allowed me to study how language actually works, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Not only in its structure, not only like, okay, the way a lot of people understand language. Oh, you're studying language. So the first thing people will ask you is, how many languages do you know? And to be a linguist, you don't need to know extra languages. You're
Yeah.
studying, it's like a science of language. So you're studying how a language, any language can work, right? So it, and not only the or the grammar part. So then when you start explaining to people, then people will say, oh, grammar you mean, but it's not like the way grammar is taught in schools to us, right?
Yeah.
It's really about how languages in the world came into being, evolved, right? What are the different ways in which languages express all the communication needs and intents of a speaker? How does a user perceive and understand these things? The way we communicate, for communicating between human beings, language is the most important medium, right? And therefore we kind of have all the metaphors that we use, like the language of dance, the language of music, because we
Yeah.
use language for any kind of communication, right? And just to see how sophisticated and how complicated and how complex this entire mechanism is, and how humans use it is just so fascinating, and that's why I just like kind of fell in love with it.
Well, I like it just shows that, when you really have, like you said, when you really love something, then you know it immediately, and then it just takes you to
Yeah.
such extents like where you are right now, So that's great. Um, so over the whole journey, were there any difficulties that you had to overcome to get where you are right now?
um I think they always are. So when people talk about their youth, I was very lucky because my parents supported me completely. You know, there were no like, oh, you're a girl, so you can't do this kind of situation in my family. Um, my father was extremely supportive of whatever we wanted to study or do. Like if I had gone to him and like one day if I would say I want to be a ballet dancer, he would have said, "Oh, wonderful! That's such an interesting thing." And the next day I would have gone and said, "No, I actually want to be excavating mines." He would have said, "Yeah, miners are like great people." So he was really cool and really supportive of whatever it is that we wanted to do. So I did not have any problems doing what I wanted to do at that stage. There was in a more larger social extent and a much more extended family, this whole question of, oh, she's studying linguistics. What do linguists do in any case? She can only be a teacher after this. As if like being a teacher was not something very ambitious.
Yeah.
When I actually got the scholarship to go study abroad, I know that a lot of people in the larger extended family asked my mother, but she's going to go away, and when will she get married? And then, the third thing that, a lot of girls in this country have to deal with is like, oh, you're going to get her so educated. Then how is she going to find a suitable groom?
Hmm.
But luckily for me, I didn't have to deal with all this. If I heard all this happening around, but my parents dealt with it. They didn't let it come to me. The first problem that I had was like, going abroad. I had led a very protected life. Um, and it was the first time I was away from home and I went to England. The culture shock, your generation has less of a cultural shock probably because we are just much more connected. Being in a country, coming from a place where if you did not show your face 20 times a day, your friends would call you and find out what's wrong with you, right? um, if you were missing for one day, the entire class would like land up at your place to find out if you're okay, right? And then I go to a country where the culture is like to not interfere, to not question too much. And I remember like, getting flu and being sick. And I didn't step out of my room for nearly 3 days. And even my housemates did not knock to find out if I was okay or not because it's considered impolite to
Yeah.
do that. So there were these kind of cultural shocks. The other thing also is that in our country we are kind of trained. It's changing but not changing fast enough. We're expected to be polite and what we call respectful of people in authority. And that was something I had to learn, to question. We're not encouraged to question. So we're not encouraged to ask teachers questions. We're not encouraged to ask so-called experts questions, right? um, and that kind of took me some time to get into the habit. And the reverse of that was that when I came back to India, so all the time that I was in Europe and in England, everybody thought I was not aggressive enough. They were like, you
Yeah.
you have to put yourself out, you have to ask. You're not like, you have to just be more vocal. And then when I came back to India, the everyone here thought I was just too vocal, you know a little bit. Yeah, women, why are women not expected to have an opinion and express it is the question we should be asking. And that's where the whole thing came from, that um, why is she always questioning, why is she so aggressive? And and the whole, I had to do this whole cultural shift again, um, when I came back to India. So that has always been an issue, like, just being a woman, a working woman in any country, but even more so in ours, um, means that you have to keep pushing against things all the time. The second thing is like being a linguist and being in a lab where everybody is like a super duper computer scientist. You know, all of them, all the people I work with, all of them are individually capable of winning Nobel prizes. Um, there is this thing that that again is changing because the field itself is getting much more multidisciplinary. But getting computer scientists to value things that other disciplines bring onto the table, like social science or linguistics or you know political science, anthropology, etc., is a design, is kind of a struggle,
Yeah.
always a struggle. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, so you spoke about how for being a woman in India, a working woman is can be very tough sometimes, right? And like through this, we're also hoping to inspire young girls, young women in India to go out and reach their dreams. So, what what path would you recommend for a working woman in India to maybe get where they want to be to achieve to go into a field such as yours?
I think in any field, I mean, these all are going to sound very cliched, but they're actually absolutely true. So first thing is, believe in yourself. You can do it. You know, you can really, really, really do it. Nothing stops you from going after what you want to do, except yourself. Okay? So the thing, interacting with a lot of young women and students, even computer science students or linguistic students, I see this a lot. More women than men, more girls than boys suffer from an imposter syndrome. So do not stop believing in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, it's really hard. You can fake it, but it's really hard to get others to believe in you.
Yeah.
So do not keep questioning yourself, doubting yourself, or second guessing why you're doing something.
Hmm.
Then the second thing I think it's really important is to get your own uh, cheerleading group. you know it really is, you you may not have that in your life, but if you do, that really helps. So even if you have like one or two people who are always going to be on your side and who will honestly, not fakingly but honestly, um, support you, that goes a long way. Who will tell you, yay,
Yeah.
you're great, you did it, kind of thing. It could be parents, it could be spouses, it could be family, other family, siblings, it could be friends, anybody. So it's really good if you have your own cheer squad. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and the other thing that I think that women kind of, I've seen them to give into, is this whole pressure of, um, well, women, what I have seen in India, given to emotional blackmail very easily. So, they really do fall prey to things like, you're not thinking about your family, you're not thinking about your parents, you're not thinking about your home, and those are your first priorities. Um, you're only thinking about yourself, and you're being selfish. And I would say is learn to recognize when you're actually being very selfish, really being like totally self-centered and not thinking about anybody around, and when you're actually only being emotionally blackmailed into thinking so, and there is a difference.
Yeah.
You can, and sometimes you also do need to be selfish to be, to preserve yourself, as a self-preservation thing. But keeping that apart, um, going after your dreams, wanting to do something, making a place for yourself in the world, doesn't necessarily have to conflict with your what you feel is your due to your family or your society or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yeah. Those are great pieces of advice. I mean, like, it won't, not even will it help, like the rural areas, but I think for any individual, any girl, something like that would come in handy. Because I know we all suffer from things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. There's one more thing I would really like to put out there through you, is that, if you can, um, you know, try to reach out, the more experienced women in your field. Reach out to them, because you'll find that a lot of them um, are happy to talk to you, to advise you. And they've gone through this for a longer period of time and have come up with some coping mechanisms or some techniques or some, um, experience of their own that may help you. And don't feel shy to reach out. What will happen? Someone will say, no, I don't have time, or they won't respond. But you'll find that a large percentage will respond, and a lot of them will agree to talk to you or advise you. um, so find your network of support. You need it. It's not a level playing field,
Yeah.
and it's not going to be a level playing field for some time to come. So try to find your support system wherever you can.
Oh, that's. I think a lot. I think everyone would benefit so much from doing something like that. Like you said, people don't really say no, and if they do, it's not going to cause any harm. So, yeah. So should we move on to the more work side of
Sure.
everything? Sure. Okay, so I know you're currently working on a project called Project Melange, with
Yeah.
regards to like code mixing. Am I right?
Yeah.
Correct. So do you want to speak a little bit about that and the importance of it?
Sure. So, Project Melange, there's a bunch of us, like me, there's me, of course, but there's also my colleague, Monojit Chaudhary, and my other colleague, Sunaina Sitaram. The three of us have been working, Monojit and I, for a little longer, on this whole thing called code mixed languages. So basically, the area that we work in is how to make computational models of language, um, text as well as speech, so that we they can be consumed, they can be used by computational systems. So to understand as well as generate language. Right. So it's basically to see how AI or a computational system can process a language that a human being is generating, and can also generate the same kind of language back. Now, when in that field, what we were when we were studying it, and working on lots of other things, what we started seeing was that while lot of these systems are very good at a single language, we have so many systems for English, for example, right? So many of your digital assistants who speak to you in English, understand what you say to them in English, etc., etc. Um, and quite a lot of very sophisticated technologies out there for some single languages, but a large percentage of the world's population is multilingual. And in multilingual communities, when you have multilingualism at the community level, as you do in, say, India, um, people mix languages, right?
Yeah.
We all any of us who know more than one language, and most Indians do know at least two languages, if not more, we mix them all the time when we speak, right? And the most computational systems fail when they are confronted by this mixed language. So in Project Melange, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to see how we can process such language, how we can generate such language computationally, and also, why people do it. Where is such language used? So one of the things that we use, code switching. This phenomenon is called code switching, when you switch between two languages. One of the things that people code switch for is humor and sarcasm. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, somebody might say, the petrol prices have gone up by so much, by 20 rupees. And then the next thing they might say is, ab kya hoga mere bhagwan? In Hindi, they might say, oh my God, what's going to happen, right? Now, if you are only understanding the English part of it, and that's sarcasm, that's negative comment on the thing, that's almost semi humorous. But if you only understand the English part of it, you only get the fact that the petrol prices have gone up. You do not get that the same person has like a kind of a negative view about the thing, because that part he said it in Hindi in a humorous way,
Yeah.
right? So uh, so those are the kind of things. And then if like um, we want technology like all these bots, etc., which are so prevalent now, to talk to us in mixed language, how do we know when the bot should be mixing and when it should not be mixing? We did the study around this, and we discovered that people have very varying view of this. Some people think that the bot should never mix because it's a bot, it's a machine, how dare it be like a human. Some people think it should never mix because code mixing is like, that's not regular language. It's slang, it's something bad, it's something negative. Some people think it's so cool that the bot can mix, it's talking just like me, right? So users have a very divided opinion on what a bot should do. So then what should a bot do? How do we build a bot in such a circumstances? So we've kind of studied this, and we use something that we call nudge. We don't call, it is there in the field, called nudge theory. I don't know if it's very prevalent in a lot of areas right now. So it basically means that you nudge the user. So what you do is, so this happens a lot to, I don't know if it's your experience at all, because I don't know what your linguistic background is, how many languages you speak, etc. But so if I go say to US, right, and I see somebody who's obviously of Indian origin, um, and I meet the person for the first time and I start talking to them, I would talk to them in English because that is the language of that setting, right? But I'm trying to gauge whether that person is like, where is India, is he or she from? And then I will say something and drop in a yar or nahi yaar or something in the middle of the thing.
Yeah.
And then if that person responds, so that's like letting the person know that I also speak this language. Now, if that person also responds in kind, then, within a few minutes, both of us would be like switching between the two languages and talking in the thing.
Mhm.
But if the person continues to talk in English, then I know that the person has kind of rejected my nudge, and I continue to talk in English as well. So that is something that we could possibly incorporate in human and AI conversations and interactions, where the AI bot could probably like, drop in something in Hindi, mix something. And if the human responds in kind, then, they could continue having a more mixed
Yeah.
conversation. If they don't, then they stick to one language.
So what does it mean for you to work on this project? Like in, these two fields, two different fields, technology and linguistics, and combining them to put together this project. What does it mean to you?
So actually, now when I started, it wasn't the case, but now there is a field called computational linguistics, which kind of puts the computational and the linguistics together. So now a lot of people actually do specialize in both linguistics and computer science, or they might specialize in one and somehow fall into the other. Um, um, and it's not that strange, but when in my generation it was pretty strange to be um, a linguist going into computer science. Like I said, I've been doing this for so long now that I really don't know what kind of an animal I am anymore. So uh, I think, to me, the thing that really gets me to get up and go to work every day is this whole excitement that I can somehow make technology more universal and have more humans, m- you know, all over the world be able to use technology in a way that is much most natural to them, and that it involves looking at the kind of languages they use.
And I think that's important also because now, like as everything's developing, technology is becoming a really big part, and languages also are, it's as you said, it's the way to communicate, the most important way. But they're also disappearing to some extent, right? Languages.
Yeah.
So, what is your
Yes. So actually, while I really do think that there can be technological tools that can help people who are working with endangered languages or communities that speak endangered languages, and technology can play a role in that, the most important role there is of the community. Okay, the language community itself. And there's a lot of work. So one of the things that I also work on is called Project Elora, which is about low resource languages. So languages which are kind of ignored by most of the computational work. And then don't necessarily have to be low resource in the sense of like not many people speak it, but that there is no technological support for them.